Good afternoon, fellow ruminators. Welcome back to another session, Rumination with Andrew. Thank you so much for joining as we are about to discuss a very important topical matter. And may I suggest here, before I begin the program, that this is going to be an extremely important topic. So make sure that you like and you share and you subscribe. The YouTube algorithm might not be willing to share the video, so you are the ones who have to prod the algorithms to do so, because the algorithm really is geared towards spreading a lot of things that are just not important at the given moment. And that is why we are where we're at right now, because people are not properly informed. But my topic is affirmed this morning, and I am going to look at Trump's New World Order, Mark of the Beast agenda exposed. Now, I don't want anybody to criticize me now and tell you or tell me or tell any other person that I'm suggesting that Trump is the Antichrist. Trump is not the Antichrist, right? He is just, with other previous presidents, with former presidents, laying the groundwork for the mark of the beast. The mark of the beast, just like any other infrastructure or any other movement, any other prophetic event, will have to have an infrastructure. And this is what he's doing. He's laying the religious, the political, and economic groundwork for the mark of the beast. Now, when we look at Revelation 13, we can see clearly that the mark of the beast has a number of components, three components largely. An economic component, a political component, and also a religious component, and might I add, a military component. So we have to understand that the mark of the beast is not something that is literal. You're going to be just getting something in your hand or in your forehead. It's not going to work like that. That is a literal interpretation of the mark of the beast. You have to go and delve into what we mean by the mark and who is the beast. And remember now that a beast system in the Bible refers to kingdoms or political powers or a king. That is what it refers to. So when we talk about the lion, we often think about Babylonia, right? And that is now where Iraq is currently housed, is currently situated. What is known today as modern Iraq was former Babylon, the kingdom of Babylon. We also had the Medes and the Persians. And the Persians now are spoken about to be where Iran is. Isn't that interesting that we had the Medes and the Persians, and the Persians went and they defeated the Babylonian Empire. That was, I think, was it 539 BC. Now we have also the Grecian Empire from Greece, Alexander, who went and he tore apart the Persian Empire. That was a beast, and that was a leopard, the leopard-like beast. Now we had the lion, and we also have the leopard, which is representative of Greece. Now we talk about the Roman Empire, which the Bible describes as a nondescript beast, a beast that was indescribable, one that it was just not possible for John the Revelator and for even Daniel to describe that beast. So both prophetic books, both these prophets found it very difficult to describe, to put in human language, the fourth beast that we are right now under the Roman Empire. And that is why George W. Bush said that after 9/11, that America was now the new Rome. And it's either you are for us or you are against us. Now, let us read a definition coming from Wikipedia of what is the New World Order. People talk about that and people say it's a conspiracy theory. Well, Wikipedia is agreeing with many of you that New World Order conspiracy theory. But we heard a lot about conspiracy theory during the health emergency, didn't we, 5 years ago? And a lot of what people were saying were conspiracy theories turned out to be true. So were they really conspiracy theories? Or is it that people locked down their brains and didn't want to think for themselves? So it was better to put themselves in that frame of mind, thinking that they are superior in their ignorance, in their arrogance. Now, let us look at what it is suggesting here. The New World Order, according to Wikipedia, NWO, is a term often used in conspiracy theories, which hypothesize, a secretly emerging totalitarian world government. The common theme in conspiracy theories about a new world order is that a secretive power elite with a globalist agenda is conspiring to eventually rule the world through an authoritarian one world government, which will replace sovereign nation states and an all encompassing propaganda whose ideology hails the establishment of the New World Order as the culmination of history's progress. Now, when we hear them saying that, and this is Wikipedia of today, I just downloaded this information, this definition coming from Wikipedia. They have not altered it because what they want to do is for you to let down your guard. Yes, there are secretive societies. Yes, there are secretive governments around the world, and there are globalist agendas that we must be aware of. And you cannot have gone through what you went through 5 years ago and think that the world is a normal place. Because the world is not a normal place. And you can see many things happened. I cannot itemize them to you on this channel. Many things happened that were you to be aware of what took place. Many of you are not aware because you don't read widely. You're afraid of reading things that are real. You prefer to stay in your state of comfort, in a false state of comfort and relaxation. And that is why the world is what it is. And Trump and the Kamala Harris can take over. And by the way, Kamala Harris would not have done differently. The media would not certainly have been critical of what she was doing had she been president, but she would be doing practically the same thing, right? Because she's close to the Clinton machinery and she is in dialogue with them and she receives a lot of counseling from Hillary Clinton. And those of us who have read about Hillary Clinton, we know that she is a monster. Okay? She is a monster. Some people describe her as a dude because not that she behaves like a dude, but she has the heart of a dude. Okay? So I hope that you're understanding what I am here suggesting. Okay? So this is what they're telling you, that the New World Order is just some conspiracy theory. Before the early 1990s, New World Order conspiracism was limited to two American countercultures, primarily the military anti-government right, and secondarily, the part of the fundamentalist Christian or Christianity concerned with the eschatological end time emergence of the Antichrist. So, first of all, the far right, in terms of opposing the military, they're right because the military is not there to protect you. The military is there to control the world and to control you, Americans. That is what the American military is used to do, and not there to defend American territory. And there are people who are university educated who believe, yes, they can't do anything to us. I remember I was in a classroom in 2003 when America went into Iraq, and this was a predominantly, Black school. And you could see the teachers and the students, prodding along the America's military in Iraq because they bought the Kool-Aid that they were given after 9/11 and that the Iraqi government was responsible and therefore the people should be punished. And when they were dropping the bombs, Americans were cheering along, not understanding that the same thing that was happening to Iraq is going to happen right there on American soil. They couldn't understand that because it was too much for them to understand. And one understands that, yes, when somebody attacks you, you really want to have some form of retaliation. You want to retaliate. You want to show the person that, look here, I am not going to tolerate what you have done to me. However, you also, an intelligent person, has to study why the person decided to attack. Was that person crazy? Or was it triggered by something that you did? And that is the question that Americans never asked. And now they find themselves in a situation where the military is about to turn on them. Academics who study conspiracy theories and religious extremism, so they're saying that people who are religious are who are extremists, while the academics are persons who are taught to be what balanced people when they're the ones not living in the real world. Academics are people who do not live in the real world. And that is something you have to understand. I was reading an article by Gordon Robinson, a Gleaner columnist, and he was talking about the political situation in Jamaica. And he said that he was reading something from an academic, a report from an academic from the University of the West Indies in Mona campus. And he says that, he read the report and he just had to say one of the problems with academics is that they are just not tethered to the reality. They are divorced from reality. They're just in their ideologies and they're talking about their theoretical framework, and that is what it's all about. And if you're writing a master's degree or a PhD, it has nothing to do with reality. It more is about, and I'm not saying that a few of you who demand and insist that you want to deal with real things might not go through, but the majority, the large majority of people, all they're doing are things that are tethered from the reality. And that is why we have no solutions. You go to academia and they have no solutions in terms of solving our intractable problem in the world. Okay? So this is what we're suggesting, and we've got to be careful about this New World Order. Now, those of you who think that this New World Order is something that is a conspiracy theory, let us listen to George H.W. Bush, the father of George W. Bush Jr. All right, so let's now open and share the screen so that you can listen attentively and keenly to this man who spoke in 1991 about the formation of the New World Order.
Its founders. We have before us the opportunity to forge for ourselves and for future generations a new world order, a world where the rule of law, not the law of the jungle, governs the conduct of nations. When we are successful, and we will be, we have a real chance at this new world order, an order in which a credible United Nations can use its peacekeeping role to fulfill the promise and vision of the UN's founders.
Right. So that was said by his father, that's George H.W. Bush, who is now deceased. However,
this is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org.
Get this off.
I'm Amy Goodman with Juan Gonzalez.
Let me just get this off thing. The history of Yeah, okay, sorry about that. Right. So, yeah, that is what the father was suggesting there. Now, what was interesting is that the United States had just been successful, having fought the Cold War against the Soviet Union, and they won. Well, that's what we were told, all right, that the Cold War was won by the United States, but was it? The fact of the matter is that visibly what we could see is that the United States came out the victor, and the Soviet Union fell. And the US mode of capitalism and its mode of running the world start to infiltrate all nook and cranny of our world. Now, that is the context in which George H.W. Bush was speaking. And he was saying, in other words, that the United States is about to achieve full spectrum dominance with the aid of the United Nations. And that is what we have to understand. When they say peace, you have to say war. If you study 1984, if you've read the book by George Orwell, the text 1984, and many of these people like the George Orwells and the Avram Manhattan, they had inner insights, inner connections with these globalists and the globalist agenda. They did, right? And what George Orwell wrote is that war is peace, right? That's what he said, that war is peace. That is what they, in other words, it's not that war is peace, no, but they are going to use war to achieve peace. Now, do you think you can just war your way out of this world and to achieve peace? No. We know that that is childish. You just can't be a bully and eventually peace is going to happen because the human nature is going to fight until it dies. We have that ego. We have that pride within ourselves. Until we die, we are going to fight. And so there will never be any end to the war. But the United States wants to shape the entire world in its philosophy. But it's not the philosophy of the founding fathers. And I hope that the article I'm just now about to read to you, you'll understand what it means. Now, this morning when I woke up, I saw this article and my topic was affirmed. It was published in Counterpunch, and the title of the article published today, July 11th, 2025. Yes, today is July 11th. The rise of the prison state. Trump's push for mega prisons could lock us all up, right? That is what it's going to do. And it says here, America is rapidly becoming a nation of prisons. Having figured out how to parlay presidential authority in foreign affairs in order to sidestep the Constitution, President Trump is using his immigration enforcement powers to lock up and lock down the nation. And what a word they used, they locked us down during the COVID-19 pandemic. Was that just a precursor to what, on a smaller scale, what is going to happen on a much grander scale? Under the guise of national security and public safety, the Trump administration is engineering the largest federal expansion of incarceration and detention powers in U.S. history. I repeat that. Under the guise of national security and public safety, the Trump administration is engineering the largest federal expansion of incarceration and detention powers in U.S. history. Now, let me say something here categorically to you, my Caribbean audience, and any audience out there. Let me say something. When you hear, for example, Dr. Andrew Holness of Jamaica, Miss Mia Motley of Barbados, and any other president around the world who are telling you that they're launching a war on the gangs in support of your national security, you've got to be careful and you've got to be critical of what they're doing. And oftentimes, unfortunately, they don't tell you what they're doing. What they're doing is often in secret. It's often done in secret. But the entire world is following in the footsteps of the United States, even if they don't want to do so. Because if they don't do so, then they are going to be invaded. And I was speaking to Fred Corbin of Barbados, and I published a video on the fact of the CIA's involvement in CARICOM, and you need to go and watch that video. But he was saying, that giving us very viable plans that the Caribbean could implement in order to become at least semi, if not independent. But, I countered that with the fact that we have to have a military. And he was saying, no, we just need to have strong economics and we should have a viable plan. But the United States is not now a diplomatic state. It's a military state. And as George Orwell suggested, war is peace, which means, therefore, that if you don't agree with the United States, they are going to wage war on you. Now, if we don't have a strong military in the Caribbean region, we can't defend ourselves. And they're going to invade, and invade they will. And it doesn't take a lot to invade the Caribbean because we don't have anything for them. They can just send some drones and boom, and we're finished with. Just like what they did to Panama under Noriega in 1989, under the same Bush father there, George H.W. Bush, who invaded Panama in 1989. Boom, probably it was like a day's work. And that solved the problem that they wanted to solve. Okay, that solved the problem that they wanted to solve, something that you have to take. So when Andrew Holness is suggesting that he is launching a war on the gangs synonymous with the war on terror, we have to be concerned because he is speaking with the wine of Babylon. The same doctrine that you hear in the United States. There's the same ideology behind that. And when you look at the war on terror and you read what the true historians have to say about that war on terror, you will see that the United States is the guilty one. If the United States is the guilty one in the war on terror, do you think the Jamaican state or the Barbadian state or the Trinidadian state or the Antiguan state, do you think that the Antiguan state or the Jamaican state would be the innocent one? Or do you think that they are as guilty as the United States state apparatus? I allow you to decide that question, what the answer will be. Now, he continues in his article. At the center of this campaign is Alligator Alcatraz, a federal detention facility built in the Florida Everglades and hailed by the White House as a model for the future of federal incarceration. But this is more than a new prison. It is the architectural symbol of a carceral state being quietly constructed in plain sight. With over $170 billion allocated through Trump's mega bill, we are witnessing the creation of a vast permanent enforcement infrastructure aimed at turning the American people state, or police state rather, into a prison state. So the American state is a police state, which is going to be transformed into a prison state. So you're already living in a police state. That is what you have to understand. And any of those of us who have lived in the United States, we know that. And particularly after 9/11, it was a sense that the United States was no longer the same country that it used to be. It was not as dramatic. It was dramatic in the sense that people were not accustomed to, having their phone conversations be listened into and having unwarranted searches. They weren't accustomed to that. But eventually, over the years, they have adapted to it. And the more they adapt is the more they add. And they take away every iota of your liberties. The scope of this expansion is staggering, he's saying. The bill allocates $45 billion just to expand immigration detention, making ICE the best funded federal law enforcement agency in American history. So those of you who are Americans and you understand that the ICE, who are just now apprehending, so-called illegal immigrants, and those who might be legal, but they just think that they're criminals and they should go away. You must understand that that is going to happen to American-born citizens. Trump is now suggesting that even people who are naturalized U.S. citizens, if they are deemed to be a criminal, or could be a dissident, because a dissident is now a criminal, means therefore that you can be stripped of your citizenship and be sent back to your country or to a third country. So nobody is safe in America at this moment. Nobody's safe, and that is what you have to understand. Trump's initial promise to crack down on violent illegal criminals has evolved into a sweeping mandate, a mass quota-driven roundup campaign that detains anyone the administration deems a threat. Anyone the administration deems a threat, regardless of legal status and at significant expense to the taxpayer. So many people are looking at the illegal immigrants. Oh, they're the ones who are going to be scooped up. I am safe. You are not safe. You are not safe because there could be something you did on the job. There could be that somebody, reported false testimony about you, something that you said on social media, a comment that you liked on social media, and you may be flagged as a dissident, as a threat to national security. Remember what happened the other day when the students were protesting, and many of them were innocent, I'm sure. Many of these students were innocent students who were protesting against the genocide that we see in Gaza. And we saw Rubio going to Jamaica, going to Guyana, and he was barefacedly saying on their platform that we don't want these criminals there. He referred to the protesters, many of whom were just innocently letting their voice be heard that we can't continue to have genocide. Okay. And I was reading an article yesterday, which I, found very interesting. And the writer made the solid point here that there is nothing called legal genocide or illegal genocide. You can't be illegal genocide because there's no legal genocide. That's the point he was trying to make. Genocide is genocide, and it is against humanity. It should not be done. It's against the laws of the United Nations, according to them. I have no respect for the United Nations. I'm just using their own laws, that they made their laws, so we should quote them because whether or not they're sincere, but they're the ones who crafted those laws, so we should hold them to account, right? And they did say, or the Geneva Convention, whatever these laws are. Now, let's continue with what this guy is saying, because he has some very important and interesting insights. Tellingly, the vast majority of these, or those being detained, have no criminal record. That's what he's saying. And it's true. The vast majority have no criminal record. And like so many of the Trump administration's grandiose plans, the math doesn't add up. Just as Trump's tariffs have failed to revive American manufacturing and instead raised consumer prices, the detention state spending spree will cost taxpayers far more than it saves. It's estimated that undocumented workers contribute an estimated $96 billion in federal, state, and local taxes each year, and billions more in Social Security and Medicare taxes that they can never claim. Now, it's interesting to see the fact here that he's advancing. When people think, and I'm not endorsing illegal immigration and illegal status in the country, but when people think that these people are your enemies, they are making contributions to your own system. Did you see what he said? They are contributing to your Medicare, to your Medicaid, which you can't live without, to taxes that are being used to wage war in other countries and to keep your nation afloat. So when you think that these illegal immigrants are some wayward people who need to be sent away, then you will have to pay more taxes because they won't be there to put the money, because whether they're illegal, yes or no, America requires that they pay their taxes. Uncle Sam wants his taxes, but he does things and he does whatever he wants to do in terms of sending you away and getting more illegal immigrants. Because when they send these away, others are going to come. The same sort of playbook that you see happen in the Dominican Republic with the Haitian migrants. So they turn them away and they come back and they pay them huge sums of money. Yeah, that's what happens. It's a money-making event. And soon, I'm sure, that is what's going to happen in America with the money, that if you pay, then you will be able to stay. At a time when the administration is promising mass deportation to appease anti-immigrant hardliners, it is simultaneously constructing a parallel economy in which detained immigrants can be pressed into near free labor to satisfy the needs of industries that depend on migrant work. Okay, so that is what Trump is doing. They're building a parallel economy which they can use illegal immigrants as slaves because they detain them and then they will have to work for free. They have no rights because their rights would have been stripped. Okay, and this is the sort of infrastructure that Trump is laying, the groundwork for the mark of the beast. Now, remember, the mark of the beast is nothing that is literal. It is an ideology that if you don't believe in that ideology, just like you saw what happened 5 years ago, we couldn't buy or sell. Some of you lost your jobs. Some of you were imprisoned. Okay? And some people are suggesting that some people were killed, aka they committed suicide. Okay? So we have to be careful now, not thinking, because during the pandemic, yes, you had to get your passport, your not immigration, but your vaccination card, whatever it was. And that was literal. Okay? But it was the ideology surrounding that sort of medication that you needed to have looked at. And many people were branded as being, sick, crazy, for not agreeing with what governments were doing. Many were branded as crazy and that they were affecting the physical survival of society in terms of, we want to get rid of this malady, right? And these people are not allowing us to do so. So the same thing is going to happen for the mark of the beast, that there is going to be a reigning ideology. And they're going to say that, if you don't believe this ideology, it means therefore that society is not going to be able to survive. And that is what, and in the interest of the survivability of our society, we have to, survival of a society, there's no word as survivability, but I don't think there is. But for the survival of our society, don't know what I was thinking, right? For the survival of our society, means distracted here. We have to get rid of you. We have to get rid of these people. That is what they're going to say. So you have to look at the infrastructure and their ideologies, and we can see Project 25, right? And all of the ideologies. But it's not only Trump that has think tanks, and that is what it is, a think tank. The Democratic Party has their think tank too, and the climate agenda. And when you look at the climate agenda and you look at Project 25, you really wonder what difference is it? Different style, same agenda. Different style, same agenda. And that is what you have to grasp, ladies and gentlemen. Okay? You want to think that, and everybody's talking about Project 25, and Trump and the New World Order and the end of the world. And there is much to be concerned about with Project 25. But the fact of the matter is that the other agenda on the left is similar. It might be taking a secular approach, but it's going to wind up ending up with the same results. Okay? So is Donald Trump preparing the world for the mark of the beast? As global systems shift towards digital control, surveillance, and biometric tracking, many believe we are seeing the rise of the beast system foretold in the book of Revelation. Okay? That is what we're seeing. And we in the Caribbean have to be on the alert, because whatever the United States does, Caribbean nations follow, because we are at the back. We are there, they call us the back. We are the back door. Okay, we are situated right there next to them. Okay, so they call us their backdoor neighbors. That's who we are. So we have to look and we have to listen keenly to the words, to the rhetoric used by our prime ministers in the Caribbean, to see if they are articulating similar sentiments. And so far, we hear them. If you are alert, you can hear them, because they're following the playbook from the US, New World Order playbook. They are. Okay? So whether you're in Jamaica, or you're in Trinidad, or in Barbados, or Guyana, or Haiti, this is a wake-up call. The end-time agenda may be unfolding right before our eyes. The end-time agenda may be unfolding right before our eyes. Now, let us look at Revelation 13. And we are going to begin at verse 11. Let me see if I can share the screen with you so you can read with me and you can see from whence I'm reading. And I beheld another beast coming up out of the earth beast. And those of us who study prophecy understand the earth beast refers to the United States of America. There's no doubt about that. And he had two horns like a lamb, and he spoke as a dragon. And why this is also an image of the United States is because it says that this beast, its horns, its two horns were like a lamb. And a lamb in the Bible is a symbol of Christ, a symbol of innocence. And when we saw how the US came up, it was a beast, as the Bible is suggesting here. It was a beast, another beast. But this beast looked like a lamb. It pretended as if it were a lamb, but it was a beast. And how did it pretend to be a lamb? Through its constitution. Because the Bible says that a nation speaks through her laws. And this is what is happening here, that in the Constitution, the US spoke about the equality of all men and the fact that it was giving freedom. You had the freedom to express yourself according to the dictates of your conscience. Okay, so this is what we know, that this is a compelling argument that this second beast, this lamb-like beast, represents the United States of America, and he spoke as a dragon. But eventually, this lamb-like beast is going to morph into a dragon, and a dragon is the symbol of the devil. Go and read Revelation 12, verse 17. Okay? And you'll see that the dragon is the devil himself. And he exercises, that's the lamb-like beast, all the power of the first beast before him. And we know who the first beast before the United States came up. We know that, you had the Roman power divided in Europe. Right? All these European powers, the British and the French and Spanish, all of these, divisions of the Roman Empire, they fell after the French Revolution. And the Roman Catholic papacy, which controlled them, also had a mortal wound for a time. Okay? And he exerciseth all the power of the first beast before him, and causeth the earth and them which dwell therein to worship the first beast, whose deadly wound was healed. So what is happening is that the physical, the political, the economic foundation are being laid for the religious, because this is going to wind up being a religious new world order. It's going to be a spiritual new world order. It's not what you think, that is some government is going to run the world. It is literally the devil who wants to run the world. But he's using human beings to achieve his purpose. Remember now that the devil said in the Bible that he wants to be like God. He wants himself, he's going to ascend into the clouds, and he shall be like the Most High. And because we are God's creatures, he wants us to worship him, which many of us are doing, by acceding to his philosophy of world government. Now, God has a government, but God's government is a government of righteousness, a government of truth. And he doeth great wonders, so that he maketh fire come down from heaven on the earth in the sight of men. When we look at the technological advancement of the United States, AI, and all of these things happening, when I see things on the internet right now, you don't know. Sometimes it's very difficult. There's a thin line between what is real and what is unreal. So can you imagine having AI doing something, mimicking fire coming down out of heaven? And they're talking already about AI wars, AI warfare, AI drones. So some of the things we're seeing on television, you really wonder if what the eyes are seeing is true or are true. And that is why we need God's discernment now. We can't decipher. We can't say what we see on the internet, what we see on our television sets, that is true. Because with AI now, with the introduction of AI, anything can happen and anything can be true. So watch your eyes, what they see. And deceiveth. Listen to verse 14. And deceiveth them that dwell on the earth by the means of those miracles which he had power to do in the sight of the beast. And what we saw 5 years ago was nothing short of a satanic miracle. And that medication that they told you was going to transform your life. And we saw what it did. I don't have to recap that to you. Okay? Now, if you see the biblical language, it says that it deceiveth them that dwell on the earth by the means of those miracles which he had power to do in the sight of the beast, saying to them that dwell on the earth that they should make an image to the beast which had the wound by a sword and did live. And the beast, which is a kingdom, okay? It's a kingdom, which was the Roman Catholic papacy, because there is no other beast in the Bible which had a wound and did live. All of the major beasts, world powers in the Bible, after their mortal wound, they died and never returned. And that is why Saddam Hussein of Iraq, it was rumored, and I think he did say it, that he was going to rebuild the Babylonian Empire, and the US would not have had it. Okay, because the Babylon was a world empire, was a global empire in her times. Think from 605 BC to 539. I hope I'm correct with my understand my knowledge of history, my being able to recall the dates of that historic empire. And he had power to give life unto the image of the beast, that the image of the beast, which is the United States of America, because she is the lamb-like beast, should both speak and cause that as many as would not worship the beast or the image of the beast should be killed. Right? Should be killed. And he causeth all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive. So there's going to be slavery, because it says free and bond. There are people who are not going to be free, to receive a mark in their right hand or in their foreheads. All right? Now, your forehead there is a symbol of your intellect, your knowledge, the mind. This is where you think. This is where the frontal lobe of your brain, where you make your decisions. And it's either you are going to read, understand, ask God for wisdom, knowledge, and understanding, for you to be able to use your frontal lobe to make the right decisions. Because there will be lots of confusion. And things will happen that will cause you to think and to wonder if really and truly this is not true. And we saw what happened 5 years ago. Many people were confused, and they followed what the beast power told them to do. And that no man should buy or sell, save he that had the mark or the name of the beast or the number of his name. And the Bible is giving the number of his name. Here is wisdom. Let him that hath understanding count the number of the beast. And the beast represents a kingdom. For it is the number of a man, not the number of a computer system. It is the number of a man. And his number is 666. And if you look at the Roman Catholic papacy. And many people have also looked at other systems and say that it is, that was the beast. But when we look at the papacy and we see in history, and even now, the role that she has played in history and that she continues to play now, we have to say that it's the Roman Catholic papacy. It can't be any other power. It can't be any other power. And that is what the Protestants during the Protestant Reformation said. And they knew. But they didn't know who the image to the beast would have been. They said that power was on its way because at that time America was not yet founded. Okay? But if they were alive now, they would know and they would declare unequivocally that the papacy is the real power. And when you look at the United States, remember we read, those of you who are following my channel or who have been following this channel, that Alfred Manhattan says in the Vatican in World Politics that there is nothing in this world in which the Vatican is not behind. The world wars, right? The war on terror. And you'd be saying the war that is happening in Gaza because the Pope wants to go to Jerusalem. Remember we said that the dragon, which is a representative of the devil, is a word that symbolizes a symbol of the devil. And the devil's quest is to sit in God's seat. Now, God says that when in the earth made new, not in this world, God is going to rule through his son from Jerusalem. But it's Jerusalem made new, not the Jerusalem that we know now. But the devil wants to imitate God. He's a creature. He's a created being. So he has to imitate what God does. So God says he's going to rule from Jerusalem. The devil wants to rule from Jerusalem also. So he's setting the stage in Israel, and he has now deceived the world because the devil is the greatest deceiver. That Israel as a nation is God's chosen people. And therefore, they should get some, respect on their name. And that no matter what they do, other humans should respect them. And the Jews behaved like that. But Christ what? Christ excoriated them. And he told them that his kingdom is a spiritual kingdom. And he said that to the woman at Samaria. When he went and she gave him some water, he said to her that the days are going to come when those who worship God are going to worship him in spirit and in truth. It doesn't matter if you're African. It doesn't matter if you're Iranian. It doesn't matter if you're Jamaican. It doesn't matter if you're American. It doesn't matter if you're British. Those who worship God on his holy mount will worship him in spirit and in truth, not in true Iranian style or true Jamaican style or true American style or true British style. Is that they will worship him in spirit and truth, in the spirit of God and his holiness and his righteousness. Okay? Not in the spirit of being an Israelite or Jew. Okay? Because, already Paul was telling us that he himself was a Jew and was a staunch Jew, was a devout Jew. But he said he had to change that sort of mentality that he had, in which he thought that, we the Jews are superior, understanding that in God's family, there's no difference between the Jews and the Greeks. There's no difference. In God's side, once you have accepted him as your personal savior and as your God, there's no difference between whether you're Iranian or you're Barbadian. You all have that same spirit of righteousness that exists within you. So we see this sort of push by Trump and former presidents to push America into the beast-like system, the dragon, which the Bible did say it's going to be like, right? And we are seeing the rise of an authoritarian state in the United States of America. And you can't tell me that that's not true, because unless you're not reading. Okay? Let me just read you a couple of the statements from what the guy is here writing, the writer of this article. What Trump is building isn't just a prison state. It's a forced labor regime where confinement and exploitation go hand in hand. And it's a high price to pay for a policy that creates more problems than it solves. As the enforcement dragnet expands, so does the definition of who qualifies as an enemy of the state, including legal U.S. residents arrested for their political views. The Trump administration is now pushing to review and revoke the citizenship. Okay, I'm going to read it again. The Trump administration is now pushing to review and revoke the citizenship of Americans it deems national security risks, targeting them for arrest, detention, and deportation. And if you are not, if you don't belong to another country, whether you might not have come from Jamaica or from Barbados or from Trinidad, and you're now residing in the United States, so perhaps they will send you back to those countries. Perhaps because they might also send you to a third country. But for American citizens who were born there, whose forefathers have been living there for a long time, you can be sent to, or will be sent to, a third country. Okay? That is for sure. That is for sure. And notice that Marco Rubio said when he went to Jamaica that he's going to send these people far away from the United States because he doesn't want them to have any influence or impact on U.S. foreign policy. And next thing they end up being in Jamaica or in Barbados, close to the United States, and then begin to talk against the United States and what he's doing. So to avoid that, they will be sent to lands far away, perhaps from their own country or the country of their ancestors. Unfortunately, the government's definition of national security threat is so broad, vague, and unconstitutional that it could encompass anyone engaged in peaceful, nonviolent, constitutionally protected activities, including criticism of government policy or the policies of allied governments like Israel. So if you criticize anything the United States is doing, even if that country is a repressive state, and you are speaking out against that repression, and I don't have to even say that this is lived experience. You see what is happening in Gaza. You see what is happening there, and what the young people are trying to do on the different university campuses. And you see the repression of their constitutional rights, that they're silenced. And some of them have been expelled from universities. University presidents lost their jobs because of what was happening in the Gaza area and their criticism of it. And the fact that they weren't able to control their students who were engaged in these acts of protests. Okay? And it happened, by the way, under both administrations. Started under Biden and Kamala Harris. So if you think that Kamala was coming to behave differently and she's not building on this beast-like state, and she's not a part of the beast system, then you are living in La La Land. And I'm not sure what is going to be able, or who is going to be able to wake you up. Listen to what he's saying, and I'm going to end here. Critics of the post-9/11 security state. Critics of the post-9/11 security state, left, right, and libertarian alike, have long warned that the powers granted to fight terrorism and control immigration would eventually be turned inward, used against dissidents, protesters, and ordinary citizens. Yeah, that's what is happening now. That the state is at war on American citizens. If we continue down this path, sharing on bigger prisons, broader police powers, and unchecked executive authority, if we fail to reject the dangerous notion that more prisons, more power, and fewer rights will somehow make us safer, if we fail to restore the foundational limits that protect us from government overreach, before those limits are gone for good, we may wake up to find out that the prisons and concentration camps the police state is building won't just hold others. One day, they may hold us all. And that's what's going to happen. That is what is going to happen. The foundation is being set. The stage is being set. Okay? Is being laid for dissident voices. And that is what the Bible is saying. If you do not conform to the religious, political, military, economic ideology and agenda, that you will be killed. This is no joke. This is no joke. And if you want to go back and read Daniel 3, when the 3 Hebrew boys, and those Hebrew boys were a part of the Babylonian government. And when, talk about surveillance, when the image to the beast in Daniel 3 was built, and these 3 Hebrew boys who were a part of the Babylonian government, known by Nebuchadnezzar himself, because they were a part of the government. So even governors can be killed, and members of parliament and, congressmen and congresswomen can be killed. Because some of them are not a part of the system. Some of them are people whom God placed there to let people know his judgment and who he is as the true God of heaven. Okay? So these 3 Hebrew boys, when everybody, after the music started, because they're going to use music, and you dance and you sing and you love that, right? You love to hear your Beyoncés. Love your Beyoncés and your Michael Jacksons. And they sing those black and white, and you dance and you feel good. You feel that sort of, they build up your emotions. And you think that they're standing up for Black people, or they're standing up for Ibrahim Traoré. Because they're going to make the thing sound so believable that if you do not know truth, if you do not understand truth, you're going to be deceived. And there are people who are now happy to some extent with what Trump is doing, because they're saying, wow, we're happy that we never voted for Trump because Kamala would have done better. Okay? So this is where we are, is because of Trump voters. Do you think that is true? It's not true. It's because of successive voters on both sides of the political aisle. When you read America's history and you look at what Eisenhower said about the military-industrial complex, and I've read that on a number of occasions to you, and he himself, who helped to have built up this military-industrial complex, was telling Americans when he was demitting office that they should be on guard against it. Yet he was complicit. He also helped to have laid that foundation against which he was speaking after he had demitted office. And this is the hypocrisy of our politicians. When they're no longer in power, they speak as if they are on the right side of history. But whilst they were in power, they too helped to have laid the bricks and the foundation for where we are currently at. I say this to say that successive governments have laid the foundation that Trump is building on. And it's too far gone now. The foundation is far set, it's far gone. But the point I was making with the 3 Hebrew boys, though, is that when the music started and the people started to worship and they bowed down and they started to sing, hallelujah, salvation and honor, glory and power to the na-na-na. And you sing and you have your hand up there and you think that your governments are helping you, okay, while you're worshiping the devil. But the 3 Hebrew boys, they were not caught up in that sort of emotional appeal. because they knew the true God of heaven. So when they look at the image, it was a physical image, a physical statue, right? And they said, we're not going to bow. And they could have said, you know what happened? It's just a dead image. We just bow and appease him. But they said they are not going to bow because of the implications. Nobody should force you to do that which you do not want to do. And that is what happened 5 years ago. Nobody can tell me to eat something that I do not want to eat, or to drink something that I don't want to drink. If you are forcing me to eat it, even it could be my best food. Could be the food that I love the most. But if you are telling me to eat up, don't tell me to eat up, because first of all, I'm not a baby. So it's either I'm going to eat it or I'm not going to eat it. But it's my decision whether or not I decide to eat it or to drink it. So the fact of the matter is that when they saw that the 3 Hebrew boys were bowing down to the image, what did they do? They provided surveillance to the king. And they said, okay, aren't those the 3 Hebrew boys that you have in your government? Didn't you say that everybody had to bow down to the image of the beast? And the king said, yes. Now, the king loved those 3 Hebrew boys. They were great. And remember, Daniel was the one who interpreted his dream in Daniel 2. However, he was angry because at that time, just like Trump, when you're in power, absolute power corrupts absolutely. So the king was drunken by his power and the fact that the 3 Hebrew boys, though he loved them, were not acceding to his command. And what would that mean? What would that say about him? Because the king believes, just like any president, that their diktats and their mandates should be obeyed. And if they are not obeyed, that people should suffer the consequences of not obeying these laws or these mandates. And what is going to happen with the mark of the beast is going to be a mandate, just like what happened 5 years ago. And everything that happened 5 years ago, you could see clearly that this was of biblical proportion. You would just have to be stupid or just be illiterate of biblical matters, of biblical facts and biblical teachings, to not have discerned that something was wrong and that they were speaking to your conscience and that nobody should ever tell you what to do with your own body, your own mind, and your conscience. That is between you and your God. That is between. Do you know that even who you vote for, and let nobody shame you? Oh, you don't vote, or if you voted for Obama, or you voted for Trump, or you voted for Kamala. That is your right, and it should be even private. You don't have to share it. There are things that we have become, we love this surveillance state now that people look at me sometimes. I like to share things, and whatever. But I understand that we live in a wicked world. And oftentimes when you share things with people, they're sharing it with others. It ends up being in hands or places that you don't want it to be. These people they just might not like you. And the people that reported the 3 Hebrew boys, because the king didn't see them, but their enemies reported them to the king. And it could be those who pretended to have been their friends who did it likewise. We don't know. We only know that some of the governors in the king's palace reported these 3 Hebrew boys. Okay? And the king was infuriated, was livid. And he said that they have to be put in the burning fire, which he did. But thanks be to God. Thanks be to God. God saved them out of that fiery furnace. We know the story. Now, another fiery furnace is on its way. And we have to educate ourselves about what lies ahead. And it will, just like Daniel 3, the story in Daniel 3, it will have a fiery. And it's not necessarily that you're going to be thrust into fire. Some of us might be. because some people in the Dark Ages were thrown in the stake. They were burnt at the stake. Okay? But more importantly is that we will have to go through the fire of affliction, the fire of persecution, that which we went through 5 years ago, those who were dissident voices. You couldn't buy, you couldn't enter a supermarket, you could not, you could not be around people. Some of you were denied access to hospitals, the very place that you should save your lives, because of your dissident voice. So Trump is laying this groundwork, and not only Trump, but all the countries around the world, including Jamaica, including Barbados, including Trinidad, including Antigua, laying the foundation for the mark of the beast. Now, who are you going to worship? Are you going to worship Donald Trump? Are you going to worship Mia Motley? Are you going to worship Andrew Holness? And, as I say worship, I am seeing that sort of mindset coming out of, coming from all over the world. You either like Kamala or you like Trump, and you go there and you worship them. You go to all of these campaign, events, and you worship them. You think that a man or a woman can really bring about the changes in the world that you desire for them to do. No man can do it. We are at the juncture of history where we are going through a stage 4 cancer in terms of our politics, in terms of our economics, in terms of our religion. We are at stage 4. One, because we are not informed, or people are not informed. So when you speak against Andrew Holness, wow, it's almost like, don't harass him. Somebody told me, you're harassing our prime minister. Stop harassing the Jamaican prime minister, because his feet should not be kept to the fire. And I'm sure those who are Trump supporters are saying we should not harass Trump. But yes, they should be criticized, because the Constitution, or the constitutions of these countries, these free countries, what we call the free world, all of them were created to keep a check on authoritarian government, because all governments are authoritarian by nature. Let me repeat that, because I'm getting a little bit excited. Okay? Sometimes when these thoughts come to my brain, I'm ready now to preach. It's revving me up. Right? And so all governments by nature are autocratic. And that is what led Lord Action, the British gentleman, to have said that absolute power corrupts. Absolutely. Once you have placed power into the hands, enormous power into the hands of a man, it's going to have some authoritarian element to it. And that is why the Constitution, or all of our constitutions, have been crafted and designed to keep in check the authoritarian nature inherent in all systems of government. But we think that we send them and they are the ones upholding the Constitution. But they're not going to uphold the Constitution if we fall asleep. We are the ones who should hold their hand, their feet to the fire, and say, remember, you were sent there to uphold the Constitution, but we recognize that you're not doing it. Stop it. Stop it. And vote them out. Vote them out. But that's what we're doing. We have this false sense of security with our governments that, oh, it's Kamala there. Oh, yeah, she's dancing and she knows how to dance. And she was a part of the social club there, what do you call it, the sorority. She was a, whatever she was, an alpha. Right? And she knows the Black movements. So she's African-American, and there's no danger that she is evokes, or she's evoking. No, certainly she's not in any way a threat to our freedoms. How can she be when she went to Howard University? She's a black woman, isn't she? Or is she? What does it have to do with blackness? What does it have to do with whiteness? If anybody is white or black? Okay? It has to do with values and attitudes. It has to do with values and attitudes. When we talk about the empires of the world, which were deadly, they were beasts. The Bible describes them as beasts. They came from Africa, from the Middle East, and from Europe. And now we have one here in the Americas, the United States of America. So they came up having different colors and hues of humanity. They were just evil. Didn't have anything to do with their skin color. They were just evil systems of government. But God is in control, and he lets them do their thing. That's a good thing with God. And they, have their pride, and he builds up he builds up their pride, but he allows them to build up their pride until he puts them down. Because God is the one who sets up and he puts down. Even Trump that is in power, it is God who allows him to be there. And Mia Motley, God allows her to be there. And that is why we have to be careful. Yes, we can critique their policies, but we ought not to have a revolt against them, because that's not because sometimes God is read Romans 13, and God sometimes uses governments in judging his people. Right? Because his people, when they shift off, when a nation shifts off course and they become idolatrous, and they are not doing what God wants them to do, they become immoral. Then God sets up governments from the same people to punish them. And my God, aren't we going through some judgment right here in our world right now? So my task is to inform you, to let you know that this is what is ahead. The mark of the beast. And the beast is a system of governance, of government. That is what it says. It's not one man. It's a system. It's a system. It is the system of government or governance that we have to be careful about. It's not this one man. It's not just Trump. Trump, yes, he's the one now in office, and he's the face of the establishment. He is the face of the system, but he is not the system. The system controls him. The system controls him. Okay? And that is what you have to understand. I end here by saying there was another story in Daniel in which Daniel, who was a Jew in the empire of the Medes and the Persians after the Babylonian Empire had fallen, and they had laws that the king could not change. Once the king signed off to those laws were set. And when the Medes and the Persians saw that Daniel liked to pray, and they were against praying, but Daniel knew that they were against praying, but Daniel prayed 3 times a day. He opened up his windows, and he knelt and he prayed 3 times a day to the Most High God. Okay? And they connived. The people in that government, in the government of the Medes and the Persians, they connived and they went to the king. It was Darius, right? And they said, you have this governor, and Daniel was probably the first governor, probably the prime minister, right? Of that known world, of that known empire. And this guy is always praying to an unknown God. He's not praying to the gods of the Medes and the Persians. And you must have a law that no man should worship any other god but the gods of the Medes and the Persians. Another thing is that when a king, even though the king at the time loved Daniel to death, but he did not know another system of surveillance, another evidence of surveillance, another example of surveillance, that these guys were surveilling against Daniel and that they were targeting him. Okay? And they said, if anybody is found praying to any other god but the God of the Medes and the Persians, that they should be placed in a lion's den. Okay? Daniel knew what they were doing because God revealed it to him. And he continued to pray. And what did they do? They placed him into the lion's den. The king prayed all night. They couldn't sleep that night. The king. Because he did not know it was Daniel that they were reporting on. Because he would not have given that command. Because he loved Daniel. He saw the wisdom in Daniel. He saw that he was an effective minister of government, an effective prime minister. And he would not want anything bad to have befallen Daniel. But Daniel was saved out of the mouths of the lions. God shut up their mouths. He was in there all night with these massive beasts. Right? And when they are angry, first of all, lions don't like you to be on the territory. Once you are not a part of their territory, they are going to devour you. That is what they do. It doesn't care if it's another lion. Once you do not belong to that territory, and Daniel would not have belonged to their territory, right? He was an intruder, and it was natural for them to have devoured him, but God shut up the mouths of the lions. Okay? For those of us who are speaking out, we have to pray that God will shut up the mouths of the lions who want to kill us, the lions who don't want us to speak, who want to silence us. And so we can shout that the mark of the beast is on its way. Trump and the Bidens and the Obamas and the George Bushes and the Eisenhowers and all of them, the Johnsons, they have built up the system. And this system is draconic. There's no doubt about that. And it is going to cause, as the Bible here is saying, the entire world. No, this is something but a few remnant, because we have to read the Bible also in context. The Bible says he has a remnant, but a remnant means that it's a small group of people who will not yield. The majority are never right, ladies and gentlemen. Any decision you're making when the majority is, especially if the decision is very important, when you see an entire populace moving into one direction, you need to go the other way. Because many times they are not right. Right? And, let me just end the video here because there's just so many things to talk about. But make sure you like and you subscribe to the channel. You need to like the videos. If you don't like the videos, you don't interact on the videos, the YouTube algorithm is not going to share the video. That is what they do. That is what they do. So if you want them to share idiotic stuff, which they are, because that is what our people are, then let them pass these things on. But at the end of the day, you are the one who is going to be in trouble. And you will not know what is happening. You will be totally misinformed. And you will be deceived, because the Bible says that the image of the beast is going to cause the entire world to wander after the beast, which is a kingdom, a religio-political kingdom. And many people are just looking at Trump, and they're just looking at what is happening with the tariffs, and they're just looking at what is happening, here and there with the deportations, but they're not looking at the big picture and seeing how he's laying the foundation for the total eradication of all the rights which have been articulated in the US Constitution. All of those principles will be eradicated, and you'll be left to stand on the rock, which is God, or on the sinking sand. And that's why the songwriter says, my hope is built on nothing less and Jesus' blood and righteousness. On Christ, the solid rock, I stand. That's what it says. Every other ground is sinking sand. Because this political system, this system of the beast, these beasts, whether they be the Babylonian beast, the Medes and the Persians, the Grecian Empire, the Roman Empire, the Chinese Empire, all of these things are sinking sand. Right? They're sinking sand. They are going to die because God checks them. And at his time, he is going to give them a deadly wound. Right? Thank you so much for joining. I hope that you'd like, share, and subscribe. Like the videos so the videos can be shared with as many people as possible. Don't be selfish. We've got to spread truth along. We are living in some of the most dangerous times in human history.